Seattle just ranked dead last, number 20 out of 20 in the Case-Shiller 20 City Index, the worst performing major housing market in the United States. Stand on the Bellevue waterfront and look at the skyline glass towers, mountain views, the kind of built-for-tech wealth that made this city feel bulletproof for 20 years. But here is what they are not telling you. One city, just north of Seattle, just saw home prices fall 20.3% in a single year. And Seattle is not the only city on this list. Today, we count down the 10 Washington state cities where home prices are imploding right now, city by city, number by number. And the city at number 1 may be the one that surprises you most. Subscribe now, so you never miss the next housing warning. Drive into Olympia on a gray Pacific Northwest morning, and the Capitol Dome catches the light through the clouds. Tree-lined streets. Coffee shops still flipping their signs to open. The kind of small city where you expect things to be steady, because the government never really leaves. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to available Washington state listing data, 37.9% of the 348 active listings in Olympia have already cut their asking price. That is more than 1 in 3 sellers in the state capital willing to take less just to find a buyer. Olympia runs on government jobs, state workers, legislative staffers, agency employees. That keeps the floor from completely collapsing. But a government salary does not stretch far enough to absorb a home priced for the tech boom that just ended. And that is exactly who priced these home sellers who watched the Seattle metro inflate for a decade and assumed the tide would keep rising all the way down here. According to Redfin's Washington state data from March 2026, active listings statewide jumped 29.3% year over year. That wave started in Seattle. It moved to Bellevue, and now it is washing into Olympia. A growing number of homeowners in this market report sitting on properties listed for weeks with no serious offers. They dropped the price once. Then again. The agent calls are getting shorter. If you bought near the 2022 pandemic peak in Olympia, available market data suggests you likely paid somewhere between $450,000 and $500,000. With more than 1 in 3 active sellers now cutting price just to move their homes, the gap between what you paid and what the market will offer today has no clean answer anymore. 37.9% of your neighbors have already cut their price to escape. What does that tell you about the buyers who are left? Tacoma sits south of Seattle, with views of Mount Rainier on clear days, working-class neighborhoods, mixed with waterfront renovation projects, a city that spent years being described as the affordable option. The place where you could still buy a house without selling your future. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Washington state housing market projections, Pierce County home values are on track to decline 0.8% this year. That number sounds small. The problem is that Tacoma was not supposed to decline at all. This was the safe landing zone, the market that would hold when the premium suburbs softened. The whole premise of Tacoma, as Seattle's affordable alternative, depended on one thing: Seattle staying desirable and expensive. When Seattle becomes the worst performing housing market in America, that premise breaks. The buyers who were supposed to buy in Tacoma, who needed to sell in Seattle first, no longer have the equity to do it. According to Redfin's Washington state data, statewide new listings climbed 14.5% year over year in 2026. That supply is not staying in King County. It is spreading south into Pierce County, arriving in a market that was already running thin on buyers. A growing number of people who moved to Tacoma in 2021 and 2022 had the same plan: buy here, build equity, move up to Seattle or Bellevue in 5 years. That ladder required the rungs above it to stay intact. The rungs are breaking. If you bought near the 2022 peak in Tacoma, available market data suggests you paid somewhere between $450,000 and $500,000. Factor in closing costs, agent commissions, and the carrying costs of a home sitting 30, 40, 50 days on market, and a small percentage decline becomes real money lost at the closing table. You moved to Tacoma to escape Seattle prices. So how does it feel knowing the same forces that broke Seattle are already at your front door? Drive into Redmond, and you feel the quiet confidence of a company town that won. manicured campuses, high-end coffee on every corner, glass and steel office buildings with Microsoft logos visible from the highway. This was the dream live, where the company lives, buy into the ecosystem, let the stock options take care of the rest. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Redfin's May 2026 data, the median home price in Redmond is $1,300,000, down 0.06% year over year. Essentially flat. At one point, $3 million. The inventory is building, the days on market are stretching, and the buyers who were supposed to show up, many of them are no longer here. According to industry tracking data, tech sector layoffs across the Seattle cluster topped 150,000 jobs over the last 2 years. The people who bought in Redmond, who justified a 7-figure mortgage with a Microsoft or Amazon salary, who treated a $1.3 million price tag as a reasonable career investment. A significant number of them are now working through severance packages, not bidding on houses. There is another force at work that most real estate coverage ignores. Washington's capital gains tax on income above $250,000 signed into law in 2021, and upheld by the state Supreme Court, created an unexpected trap for high earners. According to reporting by the Cascade team, a routine home sale for a senior tech worker in Redmond can trigger $40,000 or more in unexpected state tax liability. A growing number of homeowners are finding it more profitable to simply stay put or leave the state entirely. If you bought near the 2022 peak in Redmond, here is what happened to your money. According to Redfin, the median sits at $1,300,000. Today essentially unchanged from 18 months ago. In a normal market, flat is survivable. At one point, $3 million with a 7% mortgage flat means you have spent tens of thousands of dollars in interest to go nowhere. You bought the Microsoft dream, a home in the city where the company was born. What happens to that dream when the layoffs keep coming, and your home is worth the same today as it was 18 months ago? Kirkland sits on the eastern shore of Lake Washington, all waterfront restaurants and weekend boats, the kind of suburb that was supposed to be immune to downturns because of who lived there. Tech workers, executives, people with stock options, and a long runway to wait out any soft patch. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Northwest Multiple Listing Service data, East Side inventory has doubled since December 2025. Doubled in 5 months. When supply doubles and demand does not follow, there is only one outcome. According to IRS migration data, Washington State has fallen to number 29 in national inbound migration rankings. Idaho is now number 1. The tech workers, who used to compete over Kirkland waterfront listings, are increasingly choosing Austin, Dallas, and Boise cities with no capital gains tax exposure, lower cost of entry, and a housing market that is not at historic inventory highs. A growing number of sellers in Kirkland report listing with expectations built from 2021 multiple offers, waived inspections, cash buyers in the first week. Instead, the home sits. The open house draws a handful of people. Week 2 passes. The agent starts the conversation about price adjustments. If you bought near the 2022 peak in Kirkland, according to available East Side market data, you were likely paying north of $1 million for a standard family home in this zip code. With East Side inventory now doubled, and the buyer pool visibly thinner than it has been in years, your equity position is softening, not in a catastrophic way, yet, but in the way a slow leak softens a tire before you realize it is flat. Inventory doubled since December. Doubled. If you listed today, how many of those competing sellers do you have to beat to find a buyer, and are you prepared to cut your price to do it? If this is hitting close to home, hit subscribe. We cover these markets every week so you can stay ahead of what is coming. Head south from Bellevue, and you hit Renton, closer to the tech corridor than most people realize, more affordable than East Side standards by a wide margin. The kind of city where teachers and nurses and small business owners actually manage to buy homes, while their colleagues in Bellevue could only watch from the sidelines. Renton was the compromise, the smart move. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Redfin's 2026 Washington state data, new listings across the state jumped 14.5% year over year. That supply is not confined to Seattle and Bellevue. It is spreading into every corner of the market, including the corners where people bought specifically because prices were still manageable. Renton's value proposition was always dependent on the premium markets above it staying expensive. When Bellevue falls 11.3% and Woodinville falls more than 20%, the gravitational pull that kept Renton prices elevated begins to weaken. A buyer who might have compromised down to Renton in 2022 can now negotiate a better deal in Bellevue itself. A growing number of buyers in the Renton market report being told by their agents that this was the smart play, the market with room to run, while the East Side premium submarkets were overheated. That story made sense in 2021. In 2026, according to available market data, the inventory flooding in from across the East Side is finding Renton's buyer pool just as stretched as everywhere else. If you bought in Renton near the 2022 peak, according to Redfin's May 2026 data, the Washington state median is down 0.88% year over year at $612,823. With new listings continuing to climb and the East Side buyer pool thinning, the spread between what you paid and what a buyer will offer today is getting harder to paper over. Renton was the compromise, not Bellevue prices still close to tech. But with inventory flooding in and buyers pulling back, who exactly is lining up to buy your compromise? Stand in the lobby of a glass tower in downtown Seattle on a Tuesday afternoon and look up. 40 stories of floor-to-ceiling windows, rooftop terraces, concierge desks. The kind of building that sold the idea that urban living and financial security were the same thing, that being close to the office, close to the energy, close to everything that was happening in this city was worth any price. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Seattle area market data and local analysts, the average downtown Seattle condo is now priced at $659,441, down 3.7% year over year. More telling, condo inventory in the downtown core has climbed to 6 months of supply. 6 months is the threshold that defines a buyer's market. Downtown Seattle has crossed it. The reason is not complicated. The office buildings that justified paying $600,000 to live within walking distance of work are half empty. The companies that drove Seattle's urban boom, the ones that signed the leases, recruited the talent, and made downtown feel like the center of everything, have relocated departments to Austin, shifted to hybrid schedules, or eliminated headcount entirely. The office is no longer where it used to be, so the premium you paid to be close to it no longer makes sense. A growing number of downtown condo owners report being unable to rent their units at rates that cover carrying costs and unable to sell without accepting a price that wipes out years of supposed equity gains. The investors who bought these units as income properties are caught between a rental market softening from above and a sales market softening from below. If you bought a downtown Seattle condo near the 2022 peak, according to Seattle area market data and local analysts, you likely paid somewhere in the range of $650,000 to $700,000. At 3.7% down year over year, that is a paper loss of roughly $24,000 to $26,000 before you account for HOA fees, property taxes, and the cost of sitting on a unit that will not move at your asking price. If you bought a downtown Seattle condo to be close to the office, and now the office is in Austin, what exactly are you paying $659,000 for? Pull up a map of America's housing markets and find the cities that are struggling. Detroit, Cleveland, New Orleans, the Rust Belt cities, the Sun Belt cities that overbuilt. Those are the places you expect to see at the bottom of a national housing index. Seattle is not supposed to be on that list. Seattle is Amazon. Seattle is Microsoft. Seattle is the city that turned coffee into a cultural export and software into a skyline. For 20 years, Seattle was not a warning, it was the destination. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. The S&P Cotality Case-Shiller 20 City Index for March 2026 ranked Seattle dead last. Number 20 out of 20 major American cities. According to that index, Seattle home prices fell 2.5% year over year, the worst performing major housing market in the United States. And according to Redfin's May 2026 data, the Seattle median now sits at $879,000, down 2.3% year over year. Not Detroit, not Cleveland, Seattle. According to Axios Seattle, reporting from June 1st, 2026, the inventory of unsold homes in the Seattle metro jumped 39% year over year in April, the single largest inventory spike of any major American city. Sellers are multiplying. Buyers have stopped raising their hands. Here is how far the market has turned. In 2023, a buyer lost a Seattle home to a competing cash offer that came in $250,000 over asking price. That same home is now sitting on the market for 51 days with 2 price cuts and no accepted offer. The buyer who lost that bidding war never bought another home in Seattle. They were right to walk away. If you bought in Seattle near the 2022 peak, according to available market data, you likely paid somewhere around $900,000. Redfin's current median puts that home at $879,000 today, a paper loss of roughly $21,000 on a citywide basis. But that average obscures the losses in the neighborhoods that ran hottest. Those numbers are larger. Case-Shiller ranked Seattle dead last in America, number 20 out of 20. Your mortgage does not know that. Does your financial plan? Case-Shiller called it. Seattle is the worst housing market in America right now. But if you think that number is shocking, wait until you see what is happening in the cities just north and east of Seattle, because the worst single-year price collapse in the Pacific Northwest did not happen inside city limits. Drive east from Bellevue up into the Sammamish Plateau, and the houses get bigger and the streets get quieter. Top-rated schools, newer construction. A demographic so heavily concentrated in tech management and senior engineering roles that the neighborhood association meetings read like a Microsoft org chart. This was the tier above Bellevue, the suburb you bought when the stock options finally cleared. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Redfin's March 2026 data, the median home price in Sammamish is $1,600,000, down 3.5% year over year. At one point, $6 million, a 3.5% decline, is not a rounding error. It is $56,000 of paper losses on a single address. Sammamish was supposed to be the proof that premium price points were immune to whatever was happening in the broader market. The argument was straightforward. Only a small number of people can afford $1.6 million, and those people are insulated. What that argument missed is that the people who can afford $1.6 million in Sammamish are almost entirely dependent on tech sector compensation, and the tech sector is cutting, not hiring. According to industry tracking data, tech sector layoffs across the Seattle cluster topped 150,000 jobs over the last 2 years. A growing number of Sammamish homeowners bought these homes on the assumption that their income trajectory would only go upward. A layoff, a stock price reset, or a decision to leave Washington's capital gains tax environment has changed that math for more households on the Sammamish Plateau than public data currently shows. If you bought near the 2022 peak in Sammamish, according to available market data, you likely paid somewhere around $1,650,000 to $1,700,000. At the current Redfin median of $1,600,000, that is a paper loss of $50,000 to $100,000, depending on your exact address and timing. At one point, $6 million of principal every percentage point costs $16,000. You paid $1.6 million for what was supposed to be the safe bet, the upscale suburb, the good schools. So how is the safe bet working out right now? Cross the 520 bridge from Seattle and Bellevue greets you with glass towers and luxury retail, a skyline that grew up in the middle of a tech boom and never apologized for it. Bellevue was the proof of concept, the city that showed you could build a world-class urban core in the suburbs if you had the right employers and the right zip code. For 2 decades, Bellevue was not just a place to live. It was a credential. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Redfin's May 2026 data, the median home price in Bellevue is $1,500,000, down 11.3% year over year. 11.3%. At a $1.5 million median. That is a decline of nearly $190,000 in market value in a single year on a single address in the city that was supposed to be bulletproof. The buyers who built Bellevue's market, senior engineers, product managers, directors at Amazon and Microsoft, are facing three simultaneous pressures. Layoffs have eliminated positions and RSU packages that justified the purchase price. Washington's capital gains tax has made selling feel punitive for those who bought low and watched it run. And the migration data tells the rest of the story according to IRS figures. Washington has fallen to number 29 in national inbound migration, while Idaho has taken over the number 1 spot. The buyers behind them in line have picked other states. A growing number of East Side homeowners at the $1.5 million price point report the same experience they bought in 2021 or 2022 when Bellevue felt like a sure thing, accepted a mortgage at the top of their qualification range, and are now watching Redfin update their estimated home value in the wrong direction every month. If you bought near the 2022 peak in Bellevue, according to available market data, you likely paid somewhere around $1,690,000. At today's Redfin median of $1,500,000, that is a paper loss of roughly $190,000, nearly $200,000 gone on paper from a single real estate decision. Bellevue just fell 11.3%. If you stretched your budget for the prestige address, at what point does prestige become the most expensive mistake you ever made? Drive north out of Redmond on a clear morning, and the east side transitions from corporate glass to something quieter wine country cedar forests, horse properties backing up to the Sammamish River. Woodinville is where tech money went to exhale. Bigger lots, more sky. New luxury subdivisions that sold out over weekends in 2021 and 2022 with buyers wiring deposits before the paint was dry. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Redfin's May 2026 data, the median home price in Woodinville is $952,000, down 20.3% year over year. 20.3% in 1 year. The days a home spends on market before selling have more than doubled from 7 days to 19 days. That is not a softening. That is a collapse. 20.3% is not a number you see in stable housing markets. That is the kind of decline associated with economic shocks, mass unemployment, a credit crisis, a population exodus. Woodinville has all three pressures arriving at once. The tech layoffs eliminated the exact buyer class that drove these prices to record highs. The inventory surge has given remaining buyers their first real negotiating leverage in years. And the people who can afford these homes are increasingly choosing to take their money to states where the tax environment is less punishing. A growing number of buyers who purchased in Woodinville at or near the 2022 peak describe the same situation. They made the decision that felt obvious at the time: buy in the Pacific Northwest's most desirable suburb before prices moved even higher. The math looked right. The career trajectory pointed up. The market had been rewarding exactly this kind of move for a decade. Now, they are watching Redfin update the Zestimate every 30 days, and the number keeps moving in the same direction. If you bought near the 2022 peak in Woodinville, according to available market data, you likely paid somewhere around $1,195,000. At today's Redfin median of $952,000, that is a paper loss of roughly $243,000 on a single address. In a single year, $243,000, 20.3% in 1 year. If you bought at the 2022 peak, your home has lost more than $240,000 on paper. Are you still watching, or are you finally ready to act? From the state capital in Olympia to the wine country suburbs of Woodinville, the same story plays out across 10 different zip codes. Too much inventory, too few buyers, and a tech economy that can no longer sustain the housing prices it once created. The cities that rose the fastest are now falling the hardest. And the data trail leads back to the same three factors: every time layoffs that eliminated the buyer class, a tax environment that is pushing high earners out of the state, and an inventory surge that has handed leverage back to the buyers who are still left. What makes Washington state different from every other housing market on this list is who built it. These were not homes inflated by speculative investors flipping properties. They were not vacation markets propped up by short-term rental income. The prices in Bellevue, Sammamish, and Woodinville were built on real salaries, real stock compensation, and a genuine belief that the Pacific Northwest tech economy was a permanent fixture. That belief is now being repriced, city by city, zip code by zip code, one Redfin update at a time. And here is the detail that most coverage of this market still has not fully absorbed. Seattle, the city that Amazon built, the city that put the Pacific Northwest on the global economic map, was just ranked the worst performing major housing market in America by the Case-Shiller 20-City Index. Not a struggling industrial city, not a market that overbuilt during the pandemic. The tech capital of the United States, dead last. The warning signs were always there. The question is, were you watching? This video is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial or real estate advice. Always consult a licensed professional before making any investment decisions. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and drop your city in the comments below.